It's not looking good, boys. This is not looking good. Saw this drip here, and it's coming like right under the cabinet. So, you see that? Got water right here in between the cabinets. But if you look all the way in there, I don't see anything. So I think that the sump might be leaking or has a small, very, very small leak. I checked my plumbing on that. I don't see any leaks on the plumbing side. I don't see any leaks on any of these plumbing at all. None of these. And so I think those are all good. The only thing that holds water here is this. And the problem is I can't see it because it's back here and I don't see a leak at all. So I think it might be a very small leak that's leaking in between and seeping in the seams here, and then it's just going across over there and then just piling over there because I don't see anything under here either. So if that continues, that's a concern, obviously. I stopped the pump for the overflow because what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this apart now, which sucks, and then drain this into a bucket or something, or whatever. Take this out and see if this is actually leaking, if you can see this outside leaking or not, because now there's a concern with this leaking, because there's water over there. We can't continue with that, so let's go ahead and fix that first, or figure out what's going on there. So we gotta pause this cycle for a second. All right, we are taking the sump apart. We're draining it completely. I have to undo all the piping in a little bit here, but I'm trying to drain the back here as much as possible onto here so I can pump it into here. And then we need some hands to pull the sump out. I get my dad again or something. All right, so I got all the plumbing undone, and then I got the sump removed. I had to put this back in because it was kind of leaking from the overflow. And I removed the boards here just to see if there was any indication of water, but didn't really see it. But the one thing is, once the sump was removed, that leak over there stopped leaking. So that's kind of odd. And when I had the tank turned off, with the plumbing's all in place, you know, just shut off, the leaking continued. And again, the sump was filled, the tank is filled, right? And it was still leaking. So I think it's coming from the sump, some sort of like seam or something that's leaking. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna go out because we have it outside in the garage, fill it up. All right, so we're out in the garage here. We have these two buckets filled to the brim, and this is the water from the sump. The sump actually holds a ton of water. It's over here. I have the sump. Have my dad move it out. And I was touching along the bottom of the sump. I couldn't feel for any of it. To be honest, I couldn't. I can't say, you know, oh yeah, it's over here for sure or something like that. I just don't know where it's coming from, or possibly coming from. So, have it out here. I'm gonna fill it up as if it was, you know, to this line up here where the water level is gonna run, and see if it leaks. If it leaks, we know it's coming from the sump 100%. Then also over here is the RO, and also over here is the auto top off reservoir tank. I did not fill this up, so I'm gonna, since, you know, we have it all out here, I'm gonna fill this up, make sure this holds water as well. And then yeah, we'll see where the leaks is coming from. All right, so I filled up the sump. I think I'm gonna tackle this into two phases. One phase is going to be filling the main chambers up here, which is already full all the way to the line here. And this is where the back siphon water will sit in the sump, where it's like kind of the max capacity of the sump. And it's only going to check the seams here, along up to here, all the way here, there, this corner here, and that's it. This baffle here that goes in the back here, this was against the wall, so this is where I couldn't check to see if the leak was along here because I couldn't touch it. But we'll, you know, once this here is okay for the first 2 days or, you know, day or so, I don't see any leaks coming from this chamber here, which I don't think, because what I could touch at least, I couldn't feel anything. I couldn't touch this side here and the side here, so I'm gonna, you know, double check that. But I don't think that the leak's coming from here. Once this is checked off, I'm going to fill the back chamber up to the same line over here, where that water line would, you know, sit, and then check to see if the leak's coming from there. I am thinking that the leak's coming from the seams from like up high, or on that side up high. And I want to say it's like on the right side is my guess here, on the high side or something like that. So maybe a pin-sized needle leak, or it could be, again, on the bottom and the back there that we just can't see or don't know of. But this is filled. I'm gonna let this sit for a day or so. We're filling this up right now so that we can, you know, check this as well, because I haven't filled this up at all once this was in the tank, just because I didn't need to yet, because I was still, you know, plumbing everything, checking everything out in terms of the tank. So we'll wait until this is filled. We'll let this sit for a day or so, come back and see if there's any leaks. I will be very surprised if there is a leak up front here, but we'll see. All right, so today is the next day. This morning I went and I checked. I did not see any leaks on this portion of it. I went and filled the other portion of it this morning, so it's been probably like 3 hours since I filled it. Went to check the seams in the back here. Still no leak. Over there we have the other tank here, no leaks as well. So this is very odd to me. Because I was expecting some sort of like mini micro leak, if anything, and I don't see anything. So if this is okay, then it only leads back to either the plumbing, which really doesn't make sense because I already had checked the plumbing initially, and the other theory that I had was backsplash from the way this is designed. So my only other theory, if it's not the tank leaking on the seams, because right now it looks like this is holding water just fine. If it was leaking the way it had that puddle where it was dripping like constantly, like a drip every, you know, few seconds, we would have seen some sort of water here pool right away already. So I think it could be the piping that they have set up for this design, and there might be a flaw in the design. I'm not sure. But again, this is a new setup of how they have the sump laid out. But they have the two overflow that goes into here. And if you look here, the water line of how the overflow will run, every time you turn on or, you know, off the overflow, there's a bunch of water that rushes here, and actually it kicks back the water off from the sump onto the floor, actually. Micro bubbles, all that stuff. So if you turn it on and off a lot, you have that. And that's why I put that little mesh or that little foam pad under here to kind of block a lot of that water. I wonder if even though we had that foam, all that kickback still went through, you know, it's a foam pad, right? And it still splashed back into the water, or it still splashed back behind the tank and, you know, onto the stand, and that's why we're getting that leak. Because it's really odd to me that we've had this set up for like a week and a half, and then we didn't see an issue with puddling, and then all of a sudden, after I literally posted that video of that update, it started puddling like within like a few hours. So, and the weird thing is, it didn't just puddle once. It had a big giant puddle. What I noticed, I wiped it, you know, came back like a few minutes later, a second puddle appeared, like a giant one, wiped it again, and then a third and fourth one still continued there. Obviously the puddles got smaller because I had shut off the tank and whatnot. And so I'm thinking that it could be the backsplash from the water every time I turn on and off the tank, or while it's running and it's just kicking that water back. And if that's the case, then man, this kind of sucks for this design if that's the case. Because normally, like a lot of the sumps that I have seen is they have a chamber or something up here that blocks, you know, water from getting kicked back. It has like a, let me see here. It has like, you see like something like this here. There's a chamber here that has a wall. So if there's any splashback, it splashes in this chamber here, and then it overflows out to here, right? Versus this is just an open thing, right? So I might need to build like mini lids or something for here that kind of covers like over here, so that we don't have issues like this. if that's what's, you know, what's causing it. I'm gonna do my due diligence and continue to let this sit here for another day. If we don't see literally not a single leak from here, we're basically gonna rule out that the sump has a leak, because initially that's what I thought. Like, it was pooling so much that I was just like, man, we got to do something, because I don't want like 1 million gallons of water, you know, all over the floor. So it sucks that we're delaying the tank, but I'd rather have, you know, everything check out first before we move forward. And if that is what's causing it, then yeah, I'm gonna have to figure out a solution for that. All right, so the sump is still doing its thing. We'll probably keep it another 1 or 2 days to see if the leak is there or not. We got some new stuff coming into the mail. So we got some pods from Algae Barn. Unfortunately, it was supposed to be added to the tank, which I'm going to still do. I'm gonna probably add it to the main display tank. I'll probably use half of it or something like that, and then we'll kind of fill this back up, feed it, let it kind of grow a little bit in this jar until we can actually get this thing going, possibly this weekend if it doesn't leak, and figure out, you know, why we're getting puddles of water in the corner there. But yeah, so for the time being, we'll put half of this into the display, and we've got to figure out how to aerate the display without overflowing that water into the overflow area, because we don't have a sump or anything to catch that water, you know, so gotta be careful. And also I'm going to open this guy up here, and since we have some of the stuff out, I'm gonna fit one of them in just to see how it looks. So this is actually my first time using this product and actually seeing this random flow generator. This is made out of 3D printed material, so it's flexible, kind of like squishy-ish. All right, and then this is supposed to combine back here somewhere. I think I'm gonna actually use it do I want it long or short? Maybe halfway. It's already going to be longer than what it is, so we'll see here. We'll just use there we go. Well, the problem is this thing tends to pop off very, very easily, so maybe we do need to have this at the front here. This was the original length, and it's about the same when it comes out to that. And that way I can twist these. Wow. Okay, so the one thing I don't really like about this already is the way it turns. It falls off really, really easily. This is actually one straight piece. I can't bend this. I can't twist this. What? How am I supposed to? I think we need the full length of this then to be able to turn it. Already, this is looking not good. Not good at all. Okay, so I can only bend it in these location here. It basically can only go out straight. What in the heck? Oh boy. This lock line situation is not good. This is not looking good. So it's only, this thing can only be a straight pipe out, and which is fine because that's the way I have it set up in my system. But if you guys want to bend it like this or something like that, this is the best you could do. It's like almost a Nike. Almost. There we go. There we go. It's kind of like that. Oh boy. Okay, so that's the best you can do. All right. So we'll see. We'll pour half of that in there, maybe. Okay, and then we're going to fill this up again with just normal water, and then we'll feed this and just possibly potentially let it live. We see the little pods in here swimming around. They're already on the tank walls and stuff here already, so hopefully they do good, and then we'll do this other batch once we get the filter kind of going back again. All right, so I'm doing my final check here. This is 2.5 days, and I don't see a leak out here actually. So this points back to the theory of water splashing from the overflow piping onto the back and kind of just trickling down that way. It's my theory because the plumbing to the tank is not leaking. So we have to figure out how to cover this then, is the next part. But Yeah, so I'm gonna have to drain all this water out and empty this guy and get it ready to be placed back inside. Probably won't be for a couple of days because I need another pair of hands to do this. Barely a little bit of water in the sump. Plumbing, I have not put anything in there. Same thing with the RO. And look over here. It's leaking. It's coming from the same area. So whatever it is definitely a micro leak or something with the sump. I have not turned on any of the plumbing, like nothing. I haven't even started the tank at all. Now the theory has been the sump, but what's strange is it's always coming on this side here corner and it's leaking. I checked all the bottom. I wonder if it's some leak that's happening like at this edge here that's seeping through the actual stand and straight down to there, and that's why you're puddling. But if that's the working theory, when I had removed the sump for 2.5 days out, we should have seen a puddle on the floor, but we didn't. We saw the puddle as soon as we added the sump back in empty. Well, I mean, there's an inch of water in there because that's the best I can remove. And then we had a puddle literally overnight, but the puddle was very small. And I'm thinking it might be due to the volume of water in here. And I bet you maybe if we fill this up, the puddle might get bigger, pointing to the sump. But then, like I said, 2.5 days outside in the garage, and I couldn't feel anything on the sump. Again, this is the seams, but I never checked the bottom of it because there's like a mat under there, like that yoga mat that's under there. And I didn't see anything wet from the yoga mat when we had lifted it up, right? Because I had a double yoga mat outside and I didn't see anything like that. I was like, oh yeah, it's definitely coming from the sump. So I am confused, because if we think that it's coming from the tank somehow, I would think that this would be wet and like this corner would be super wet and then would come down, or any corner of this would be wet, and it's not. So I'm confused right now on where this leak's coming from. Now this whole time I've been communicating with Waterbox customer service to see what they think it is while I'm testing out this leak test and whatnot. But let me know what you guys think. Do you think it's the sump that's leaking, even though outside I really didn't see anything or feel anything? Or is it really possibly the display tank, and I can't really tell, right? Because it's literally just going into that back corner there. Or it could be something else. So before you guys make your conclusion here, I want to recap what I've done so far, so that way maybe we can kind of figure out, narrow down some of the stuff. So when I found the leak, the tank was filled, the sump was filled, everything was running, right? I had just finished the UV sterilizer plumbing, and I had turned it on, dialed in the overflow, and everything was running smoothly. I didn't see any leaks on the piping side. I didn't see any leaks from the piping on the tank side. It ran, for a few days. And then literally right after I had posted that second video update, because I was editing, and posted the video, I went over, just kind of, look around, and I saw a puddle of water down here. It was a large puddle of water, and the drip was coming out pretty consistently. So I was like, okay, strange. Wiped the puddle, checked it again, because maybe, so there was a lot of times where I had turned off the pump on and off, and back here, what happens is the water would splash back a lot, so I thought maybe we had some backsplash in the water, something like that, and it's just residue or residual water that was coming out, okay? I had wiped it out, and then, 15 minutes later, came back, another puddle was there forming. it was a very large, fairly large puddle. Wiped it again, started getting concerned, so I shut off everything, all the pumps, everything. So that means the tank was filled, the sump was filled. Now, the sump is now actually to the top because everything is shut off. I shut off the valve to the UV sterilizer because I thought maybe my plumbing had caused a leak. So I went back there to check. Went back to check. No water coming from that area, nothing, right? Maybe it's from this union here that could have leaked and leaked down here and came over here. Nothing, didn't see anything, right? And then of course, after some time, another puddle formed, fairly large puddle. Not as big as the first one because the first one was pretty large. Wiped it again, started getting a little bit concerned, so I started checking around everything, and again, the leak continued. So, checked all the sump corners, didn't feel any leak, couldn't feel any leaks. I looked back there with a light, I couldn't see water kind of coming out from the sump going to that corner. I couldn't see anything. I checked at the bottom of the tank, nothing. And at that time, that's when I sent Waterbox an email, the first email, and I went ahead and drained the sump just to make sure, right? Drained the sump, and then that was when I decided to go ahead and take the sump out and do a leak test outside. So while the sump was sitting outside for 2.5 days during the leak test, again, I didn't see any leaks on the sump side. And this tank was still sitting full like this, just like this, no pumps running. It's just right below the overflow line there. No leaks, nothing. For 2.5 days, no puddle. Absolutely dry. I touched it under there, didn't see anything. Perfectly dry. This whole thing was sitting here. So I was like, okay, fine, fair. The sump was outside, leak test, touched all around the corners, didn't feel anything, and it was sitting, full. It was actually higher than what these lines were. Didn't see anything. Moved it back in and removed as much water as possible. There's only 1 inch of water in the sump right now, right? Put the plumbing back in, nothing else. Didn't turn, the overflow. Like there's no water in that overflow. Like I had drained it when we had, put everything out. Let this thing sit overnight. The next morning, over here, a puddle formed. It was not large, but it was like a small puddle of water. And obviously there's some water in the sump and a puddle formed. So this is really strange, like I said, because we have full water here. And when, this was sitting outside, no puddle formed. Now when I put the sump back in with very little water, we have water leakage. So my gut feeling is the sump somehow is causing a leak, where obviously I can't detect it on the seams along the tank, but what if it's under the sump where the mat is? It's glued to the sump and I can't touch it, or I can't feel it, or whatever it is, and it's seeping through there somehow. I would think that it would leave some sort of water residue, right, on there if it was seeping through there, but again, it's heavy. I can't lift it up to check. When I was outside, doing the water test, I had lifted it up, checked everything, and I didn't feel anything. There was nothing. So this is really, really odd to me. My only other thing is it could be the tank leaking. Now if the tank is leaking, it could be right here, and it's just seeping right below and straight to there. But again, there's a mat that sits under this whole tank, that sits across the whole tank. And I would think that this would be wet in the corner. The mat somehow would be wet, and I would feel that. Or it would be under here. Like that's the closest to that corner I can possibly reach. You would see some sort of stain, but nothing. So let me know what you think. I have no idea.